just like to toss in, I mean, I agree with you basically about decline or die, but on the other hand, the Jews are lucky that they don't fall into the UNESCO pitfall. UNESCO officially defines intangible cultural heritage for nations. Nations propose a style, a repertoire, a way of doing something, and a UNESCO team of ethnomusicologists says, yes, we think this is suitable to be called intangible cultural heritage, it should be protected, and then often these governments turn it into a tourist trap. They regulate that people can't sing any other way because this is the way you can only sing it, and they won't let them sing do their folk variation on it. So the fact that the Jews are never going to fall in this category, not being a nation with a state signer of UNESCO conventions, is actually kind of an advantage. It's another level. So just tossing that out there an advantage of our wretched condition, right? Josh, and then we will move to discussion.
Wow, what a historic moment we are living through. I'm just so pleased to be here. And I think everyone that's presented has made a very valuable contribution to not only our ongoing work, but our sense that we're not alone doing this. There's really been such a flowering of interest in Yiddish song in particular. And so I will now raise my banner, which has to do, I think, with the workshop that Dan and I have been conducting here and in other places, the generation of New Yiddish song. And which is to say, just the opposite of the idea of a revival, which sort of, because I mean, I was making an informal count of how many times the past tense was used in our presentations this morning. This is the way these people sang. And so, not to oppose anyone's vision, because I don't think they're actually in conflict, but my point of view is that it is a living phenomenon. And the fact that at any given moment in the history of Yiddish song, there are sources from the past which are closed off to a particular singer or a particular community is normal rather than abnormal. And yeah, I want to stress that. There is something which is called by Zemstovsky, a musicologist, very interesting musicologist, ethno-hearing, which refers to the fact that when a song is performed, informally around a table or in any context, how we classify and understand that song has as much to do with the way that people listening to it hear it as what we could say about the physical object in time and space that song represents, the sound waves, and how we can analyze it. And so what I want to propose in general as a path forward, one path forward, is modeled on the concept of the generative grammarians of the 60s, Chomsky et al. And it has to do with what question we ask. And we've had a lot of questions posed, like what sources can we find and how various things interact. The question that the generative grammarians posed was, how do we account for the fact that every human being at a very young age becomes competent in a language, which is really an astounding fact about the human condition, and in many people's opinion, the defining fact about the human condition, that we are able to master a grammar which means not only that we can repeat like a parrot who can learn maybe 20 or 30 or maybe 100 sentences, but that we are able to create new sentences in a language that will be understood by our speech community that may or may not ever have been spoken before. And this is the model that I would like to propose. This is the model that I thinking about it, have understood has been my model for what is important about learning about Yiddish song. And ideally it would create the ability for all of us to hear Yiddish song in the way in which the song is intended, was and is intended. And also, by extension, many people will be able to reproduce the song in their own way, which is to say, write new songs. As I used to say in Class Canada when I was first starting to teach singing Yiddish songs, every listener is a composer, and this is the model. So let me just jump into. I have probably 2 or 3 minutes left. Four. Oh, okay. So generative grammar takes an approach which, in our circumstance, can be very useful, because the size of the corpus is very unimportant. And not that we don't welcome every new song that we find or every new song that is written, but for the purposes of understanding what it is that generates songs, both as a listener and a writer, there's a particular technique which the generative grammarians came up with. And instead of thinking of, okay, the corpus means we draw a circle and then we try to fill it up with as many items as we can. That's one approach, okay, that's the corpus. Instead, in a way, what they said is, okay, let's look at the boundaries of that circle. And so they came up with this kind of weird thing, which was to ask native speakers. In some cases, it was the generative grammarian, him or herself, who was asking. And they say, okay, if we have this grammar in our heads, or internalized from the age of 3, we should be able to distinguish a grammatical sentence from an ungrammatical sentence. So if we take the sentence, they love me, we would all say that's grammatical. But if we hear the sentence, they love I, we would, pretty much all agree that that's not grammatical, and whatever that means. Or in the language of the linguist, it's not well formed. Similarly, when we hear, and I know I always look at Ethel, because if we hear a tune or a song, and if we are fluent in the language of Yiddish song, we can tell whether it's well formed or not. There's a kind of a thing called wrong note harmony, where one intentionally puts a wrong note into a song. And I want to sing a song, one of the oldest songs that I know, that my grandfather used to sing. And it has a kind of it has a note in there that you'll immediately recognize as being kind of strange. And yet, it couldn't be any other way when I sing this song, even though it is one that's notated in the Mlutted collection, and I say of course, it doesn't have this notated there. It goes like this. Oy vey, haben you versteht, und sitte, und in Herzen brennt a Feier, und in Herzen brennt a Feier. Ja, Elzana Chussid, la Gitter a Chussid, a Gitter. Ja, Elzana Chussid, la Gitter a Chussid, a Gitter. Okay. So that in Hausen Fire, which is a kind of a neutral third or something, yeah, is a note. By the way, I don't know of any other song that I've heard in the Yiddish song repertoire that has this. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But the question that a generative approach would ask about it is, what's its function musically? Why is it there? And I have some very good guesses to why it's there. But my point is not the answer to that question, but the question. I think by asking questions, and people that have been in workshops with me or studied with me know this is my banner. There are structural features of the Yiddish song, and personally, I because life is short, I ignore the question of why they're there. So my oh. I guess all right, I'll just finish this sentence, okay. So it's kind of, I guess I would say, my question is never, how did the leopard get its spots? But, okay, let's look at the spots. What do they tell, you know, what's valuable about the spots? You know, how do we connect the spots? Connect the dots.
Great. Thanks so much. Yeah, these are all valid issues. I mean, this is more synchronic than diachronic, and it's the way that we, but what you're saying depends on a community and an acceptance community, which the problem is, what is this community today? Most people you're teaching would not know one way or the other whether that was a good, you know. So the song then continues in other ways to evolve and adapt, just like language does, because we do things in language that we never would have done last year. As the communal consensus goes on, and as people don't know what the rules used to be anymore, and so forth.
Just to push back against this idea, remember that a child that learns.
Wait, maybe you should do it on the mic.
Yeah, we're going to need a rotating, a revolving one.
All right, just quickly, a child that learns a language. A child that learns a language, it has. Okay. A child that learns a language. A child that learns a language has very often heard a very small sample of sentences. This is the point, and I have found working with people that it doesn't take that long for them to develop exactly the sense of what is competence.
That's the competence, yeah. Okay, so I think we're going to open up, and I hope everybody will be as concise as our extremely obliging presenters have been, and nobody will halt at the drasha. But I'll kind of recognize people, and let's just open it up. So who wants to say something? Don't all speak at once. Right? Yeah.
They had like
No, but we need the mic. So you have to. Without the mic, this will be hopeless. So, and you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can hand it to the next person or whatever.
So I just want to first of all say that this is very exciting to have so many experts on what we're all doing here, and I want to add share some information with you and ask a practical question. So the collection Sasha was talking about, which is very exciting, it's about 60 songs and melodies, mostly songs and some instrumental melodies that we found in Latvia, and which I think should be shared with everyone. And the practical question is, what's the best way of sharing it, actually? So the other bit of information I want to share is that I found another collection in the Jewish Museum in Riga, which I think other people know about it, but I have not heard about it from anywhere else. It's a collection of Yiddish songs by Yaakov Sheinin, I guess. Waletzky, in which he collected in 1910 vitims. And then he transcribed it himself in 1960. So I guess he must have been young when he collected it in 1910, and then in 1960. So it's about 90 pages of mostly songs. So it's about 60, 70 songs, and there's like 5 pages of his letters, something all in beautiful handwritten Yiddish that I cannot really fluently read. There's notation and song lyrics. There's notation and song lyrics, and partly because I can't really read handwritten Yiddish, as beautiful as it is, and also I don't have time to really research the whole collection, and I looked through the music. I found some inconsistencies in notation, like 5 or whatever, 3/4 and a 2/4 bar, or something like that. But generally, it seems like there can be a lot of interesting stuff. There is a lot of interesting stuff, versions of songs that we don't know. I have no idea. Anyway, so there is about 90 pages. I took photos of all the notebooks and put them online.
So I can't hear the name of the...
So the collector's name is Yaakov Sheinin. Jacob? Yaakov? I don't know. Sheinin. Well, he writes in Yiddish. Like,
How did you catalog? What did you use?
How do we search for it? Like, we need to look it up.
Basically, okay, so I took photos of everything, and I put it online, I think on Flickr or whatever, somewhere, and it's online, and I can send you a link. And then you can research it, transcribe it, and make it into a book or whatever. Who wants a link? That's a question. Well, obviously, yes, but...
we need a list of everybody here that can circulate. This doesn't exist, or am I wrong? Yiddish folks on link list.
Can we have a
Pete will do this, right?
email group exchanging things this way?
Yeah, we need this, but
Sending
who's
each
going to
other
run it?
links on everything?
Who's going to run it? Itzhak will run it. Yeah, Pete. Where's Pete?
He's not here.
Pete is not among us. We will nail Pete and hope that he gets it done.
Just generally, I feel like there should be a comprehensive online library of sources.
But we should have there should be a list.
So
Isn't that what she was talking about with the index?
Yeah, I compiled a general list of Yiddish music resources. Sorry, I compiled. Thanks. Yeah, I compiled, if you Google finding Yiddish music online, I compiled a list of general resources for researching Yiddish, and among them is also the Yiddish folk song index, which is not, not every Yiddish song in the world, although that would be my dream to have an index of everything, but maybe we could put it
You
online.
could put this on, just put this
Put it
on.
online, maybe I could link to it, and also maybe we could each adopt a song or two and work on it and then make a concert out of all the music. That's what I suggest.
We should all, yeah. Okay. Well, so my question is that I think there should be instead of sending it to each of you individually, there should be a place, maybe I can send it to you, and then, we all know that there is an online database of Yiddish sources, yes.
Good.
About Mendeleev, am I mistaken that did not Phil Bowman put this online already?
The collection?
Am I wrong?
There is
Just an announcement.
a book by Kevin Carnes, but it's
Oh, yes, that's right. Kevin
it's
Carnes.
studied, and he published a lot of the things that are in these notebooks, but not all of them. It's just an overview, and also
Some problems.
I have issues with. We found more things than he did. The Yiddish is Nishta Zoya, there it is. There it is. La la la.
Maybe it is.
Which it should be. Yeah. No, there's the Shanyan and then there's Mango. There's two different
And
collections.
the Shanyan is completely just copies of the museum.
I
You
just
have
happened to
not,
see a review of Ken's book by Judah Cohn in Indiana. So, I understand. Now, second is about the Oxford bibliography. This is also a question for you, Amanda. That does the New York public subscribe to the Oxford bibliography somewhere?
I believe you do, but I can check right now.
Okay, because this issue, Oxford, has principles about who has access and who doesn't have access. And I would hope that our group should be able to have access. Because Lukin did a very extensive bibliography. I mean, I work on Chesner music, and in the Chesner music, we worked together on Hasidic music, and he did the Yiddish song mostly on his own. And he's very, very knowledgeable on this. So it's well worth having.
That's an excellent contribution.
The second point is that once you see the items that are on the bibliography, it would be very, very important for us to have access to the actual items, which are in some cases quite rare. Some of the pre-World War II collections, articles in Russian, in German, in some cases, in Yiddish. They're not easily accessible.
Right. Okay, who's got, yes? Asia.
I also want to thank everybody for really exciting and inspiring presentations. And just while we're mentioning resources, I want to add awareness to one that hasn't been brought up, which is the AHAIM archive, the Archives of Historical and Ethnographic Yiddish Memories, which has barely been touched. Like, we've put a little bit of the songs from there online with lyrics and biographical information about the singers, but there are still literally hundreds of hours that have not been processed, of which a very large portion is song. And the full videos are now available online through the AHAIM website. So if someone wants to sit and look through the metadata and find the songs and continue processing this archive, that's another great resource.
Do you want to say something about new things at the Book Center, or what the Book Center is doing? Anything connected to songs?
Song, not
You see, the Book Center needs to be a little more engaged in songs, in my opinion.
But yeah, just I guess about the AHAIM archive, in case you don't know what it is, it was, I think, about 900 hours of video interviews recorded with the remaining Yiddish speakers in Eastern Europe about 10 years ago.
No, that's an amazing resource. Amazing. Yeah, Jeff.
So I just have something to say. Before I speak, I have something to say. No, no. I guess there are a couple of points I wanted to pull out. First of all, I mentioned the Wahlberg article, and that was reprinted. It was re-released in what is it called? The Journal of Jewish Music. I got it, but it's. No, it's not Musica Today. I think the original was, but it's been reprinted by the Cantor's Assembly, and I have Journal of Synagogue Music, yeah. And it so happens, that's the 2010 article, and it so happens that there are other articles in there, such as Janet's thesis is in there, and Asya Schulman's article on women's Yiddish. Yeah. Yeah, so go get it, it's free, it's downloadable. And it's, I think you can just go to the Cantor's Assembly and download it. Yeah, it's really easy, and it's.
He put it all on CD-ROM.
Yeah.
You only get that publication now digital.
Yeah, but it's 2010. It's recent.
Yeah.
Okay, so one thing I wanted to say about Janet's presentation. That was a really wonderful moment. I came to the recital. You gave me the, and really, really wonderful, because people were talking about those materials, but it was sort of floating around, and you pulled together a lot of stuff. And there was also, I should mention, a young cymbal player named Walter Zepp Feldman played on the recital also.
Well, not on that piece, that's why.
No. Yeah. had one more comment, I think. Oh, I just wanted to relate to what Josh said about that sort of quote-unquote neutral tone, because this is something which a lot of us are really interested in, and something which shows up a lot in traditional, old recordings of cantorial music, and even in some contemporary performances of Chazanet or Chazonis. And I through Janet, I was lucky enough to study with Noah Schall, and I used to ask him and other cantors about this, and when I'd play something for him, he would say, no, they were just flat. But I didn't buy it. I didn't buy it. And you can hear a lot of recordings, of the sort of traditional style unaccompanied choir, where that, especially in a minor, where that third is just ringing there. That's where it lives, and the cantor is playing with it and shading it. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that. I wonder if that has something to do.
Well, it's an old hobby horse of mine, anybody who read Fiddler on the Move. Why do we never talk about tuning? I still don't understand why we never talk about tuning.
Asaf Moody has a little bit, but I don't think he's published anything. Asaf Moody used one of the auto-tune programs backwards to look at tuning of neutral intervals
in which repertoire? I mean, in songs or in
I think it was in Hasidic.
Oh, the Hasidim. So the Hasidim, yeah, I think you would find probably domains of tuning if you worked at it in klezmer or in chazonis or in nigunim or whatever. I mean, but we don't have a map of this territory at all. I think it's so fascinating. It's like, so when I said that songs are bundled parameters, they're these parameters that nobody ever looks at, they're the ones that are obvious because of musicology and the way that Western music has been it's totally about vibrations per second and about, about melodic structure, melodic contour, and maybe song structure and verse structure and metrics. Timbre, like we still don't even have vocabularies, and timbre is like almost non-existent. There is tuning, which would seem to be obvious because it is part of the obsession with pitch, but it gets overlooked. And then, as Zev and others have pointed out, gesture, which is a huge part of this and has not been sufficiently recorded visually for us, not enough notated. You're not going to find any gestures in Ginsberg and Mahler, any more than you find, tunes there. So there are these parameters that are crying out for some kind of field work. And the thing is, it can all be done beautifully now because of the digital, resource. You can, on your iPhone, you can use any number of tools. Anybody on their laptop could do things that nobody could have dreamed of in terms of analyzing things like gesture. I mean, one of the reasons kinesics was a big field in the 60s and early 70s, and it kind of died because they didn't have the way to do it. They had these crummy cameras, and they couldn't really look at people's muscles and what they did when they spoke and gestured and so on. And now we can, but nobody's doing the research. So I think more should be done with that.
Very briefly on gesture, there's a lot online that have been, for example, Cohen Courtney that was recorded with Luther Frank and yeah, which are incredible sources for, and they're singing and leading, and you see how they keep the beat and exactly what the gesture is and when that sort of thing, and then they're going to give a drush so they're standing and you can relate the gesture. I mean, there's a very rich stuff online already.
Is this like a bubble thing?
Yeah.
It's not bubble, but it's another group, and they're giving a Purim lecture. Actually, I recorded one. I mean, I downloaded one, which is an extraordinary lecture about the power of music, and in fact, it's entirely in Yiddish. But when it comes to the word music, he uses the English word, music. Yeah. It's an incredible...
No, you sent that. That's the kind of thing that could be sent around if we had some kind of list. You could just attach it and we could all watch it. But YouTube accidentally, into its vast net, pulls all kinds of fish. And we could, they're still hopping and jumping there. And we could, do something with that.
Yeah, I'd be interested, I guess, well, thank you first. This is really, really amazing. I'd be interested to communicate maybe more with people who know about dance forms, because lots of songs have dances, dance rhythms, like for example, yeah, and I don't know the dance forms, and I would be happy to sometimes have insights from people who know more about dances.
So obviously you know people like Andreas Schmidt, who's been working on this one. But this very same, it's an amazing thing, this very same Journal of Synagogue Music Fall 2010 Yiddish thing has a whole long article about Yiddish dance songs in it as well. So download it.
Okay, great.
Yeah, Andreas Schmidtges has been doing exactly that research with the Ruth Rubin collection and putting his experience and knowledge in Yiddish dance together with Yiddish song.
Yeah, and speaking about the Ruth Rubin collection, it will be online. It will be online probably around February, March. It's pretty much ready. We're just waiting for the calendar to open up. Anyway, so, but it's going to be, not everything is going to be there at first, but there's going to be already a bunch of tapes already, so probably around 200 songs when we launch, and then little by little we're gonna add things, and hopefully more and more, and also some documents from Ruth Rubin papers, which some of it is only at Evo.
She sent her things to 3 different places in this odd way.
Yes, it's, yeah, and we also.
But it's not. I think they're not the same, right? Some of it is different. There was in Haifa and in.
They mostly overlap, but the
Library of Congress and at Evo, and then don't completely overlap.
Yeah, but the papers, her actual papers are at Evo, I think only for some of them, and for the music, for her recordings, her field recordings, it mostly overlaps. There are a few holes in the Evo collection, and that the Hebrew University has. So
okay.
we're gonna.
You're in conjunction.
Yeah,
oh,
we're gonna
good.
trade.
Somebody's trying to bring online to put this together. That's great.
Yeah, we're reassembling it.
Just to quickly mention, Jeff mentioned it before, that there in 2016 there was a Yiddish Historic Performance Conference in Weimar, and quite a few people that are here were there, and there were a lot of interesting papers presented, and in my understanding it will be all published within the next couple of years. It's all getting.
Next year.
I think we're supposed to try.
Next year is next week.
Next year. Yeah, so it's like.